Have you ever stopped to notice how many men, even after reaching adulthood, still behave as if they're stuck in adolescence? How many avoid serious commitments, run from any form of discomfort, and live chasing momentary pleasures? As if maturity were a threat, not an achievement. Maybe you know someone like that. Maybe you've been that person. Or maybe on some level we all carry within us a part that has yet to grow up. A part that avoids pain, sabotages itself, that longs to be embraced but isn't willing to grow. But what few realize, and almost no one dares to say, is that this isn't just an individual behavior. It's a collective symptom, a reflection of an entire generation raised to be unable to endure frustration. A generation that learned to confuse freedom with the absence of limits and pleasure with happiness. And what if I told you that this emotional immaturity is, in fact, a silent disease? A kind of psychological and moral collapse that spreads through families, relationships, companies, political decisions, corroding the very foundation of what it means to be a real man? The name for this isn't simply lack of responsibility. It's a much deeper, more dangerous phenomenon. It's the birth of the man-child. Today we're going to dive into this topic, and not to point fingers, but to raise an alarm, because talking about this is uncomfortable, but ignoring it is destructive. And to help us on this journey, we'll turn to a name many know for controversy, but few understand for his depth. Machiavelli. Yes, him. The Renaissance political thinker who didn't write to please but to reveal the guts of human nature. A man who above all understood that power without character is ruin and virtue without action is just an empty idea. This video is not a personal attack. It's not about shaming you or exposing your wounds. It's about holding up an honest mirror so you can look at yourself with courage. Recognize where immaturity still lives and choose to grow, not out of obligation, but because your life, your dreams, and even those around you need your most mature, strongest, most self-aware version. Maybe by the end of this video, you'll come to the same conclusion so many others have reached upon awakening. The world is sick with fragility, and now more than ever, it's crying out for men who know how to carry the weight of their own existence with honor and responsibility. Don't be another one hiding behind excuses. Be the one who faces things, who breaks through, who transforms. Because the line between the man-child and the virtuous man is what you choose to do with what you're about to hear. What defines a man's maturity? The age on his ID, the responsibilities he takes on, the money he makes, or is true maturity found in what he's emotionally able to sustain, in how he handles frustration, silence, and the limits of life. The man-child is someone who's grown physically but not mentally. His face may wear a beard, his resume may seem respectable, but his inner world is still that of a teenager in crisis. He wants applause for everything he does but can't handle the slightest criticism. He wants to be loved unconditionally but doesn't know how to offer a love that requires commitment, consistency, and sacrifice. He wants the freedom of an adult but acts as if life should shield him from the consequences of his actions. He's trapped in a psychological adolescence, an adolescence that doesn't end at 18, but can last into your 30s, 40s, 50s, or even longer, because true maturity doesn't come with time. It comes with the willingness to face the pain that growth demands. We live in a society that feeds this immaturity. A culture that glorifies instant pleasure, the avoidance of pain, gratification without effort. Today, being mature seems outdated. Today, it's easier to play the victim than to take responsibility. It's more comfortable to live as an eternal boy than to face the challenge of becoming a whole man. But there's a serious problem with that. A man who doesn't grow up becomes a burden to others, to the partner who longs for a true partnership, to the children who need an example, to the world which needs men who can bear chaos with courage and clarity. Machiavelli, even in the 16th century, already saw this need clearly. He didn't use modern terms like emotional intelligence or emotional responsibility. But he spoke of virtue, of the importance of forging character in the face of adversity, and of how a man's strength is tested precisely when he's challenged to grow through discomfort. The virtuous man is formed in difficulty. That phrase could be in any of Machiavelli's books, even if he never wrote it in those exact words. Because all his thinking revolves around one principle. A man's greatness lies not in avoiding problems, but in becoming greater than them. The man-child, however, rejects this truth. He wants ease. He wants security without effort, love without giving, pleasure without discipline, recognition without merit. And when life demands more than that, he runs. He escapes into distractions, into shallow relationships, into addictions that keep him numb to his own mediocrity. But there's a truth that can't be avoided for long. If you don't grow, you rot from the inside. Because time doesn't wait, and the soul that refuses to mature will, sooner or later, collapse. Machiavelli would teach us that the weak man destroys himself over time. But the man who cultivates virtue withstands his own decline. The question is, which one are you becoming? To understand why so many men today live in a state of constant fragility, we need to return to a forgotten word, a word that's no longer trendy but holds the essence of human strength according to Machiavelli. Virtue. Unlike what people might think, virtue has nothing to do with being nice or with religious moralism. In Machiavelli's philosophy, virtue is the union of courage, strategic intelligence, self-mastery, and decisive action in the face of adversity. It's the ability to shape your own destiny with the tools you have, even when the world seems to be against you. A man of virtue doesn't wait for life to treat him kindly. He doesn't rely on applause, luck, or protection. He acts with firmness even when afraid. He plans with clarity even amid chaos. And above all, he takes responsibility for everything he is and everything he becomes. The man-child, however, rejects this idea. To him, everything is someone else's fault. He grew up believing the world owes him something. He lives waiting for fortuna, Machiavelli's term for luck, chance, the things we can't control. This waiting turns into paralysis. He blames society, blames his parents, blames the government, the school, past traumas, failed relationships, but rarely looks at himself with honesty. Machiavelli was clear in his work: whoever surrenders to fortuna without cultivating virtue is doomed to instability. No matter how much luck smiles on you, if you don't have the internal structure to face life's challenges, everything collapses with the first storm. Machiavelli's famous quote illustrates this point perfectly. "It is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you want to master her, you must dare." He wasn't talking about gender. He was using a powerful metaphor. Fortune favors those who have the courage to act, those who don't hide, those who face challenges head-on. But the man-child generation is losing that boldness. Today, daring is rare. Most people prefer to protect themselves emotionally, avoid tough decisions, and hide behind distractions. They fear failure, yet do nothing to prepare for overcoming it. The man-child doesn't cultivate virtue because it demands pain, internal confrontation, and sacrifice. And he's been conditioned to avoid everything that makes him grow, because growth hurts. But that's exactly the point. Real growth never comes from comfort. It's born from the friction between who you are today and who you know you could become. Machiavelli wasn't a defender of gratuitous cruelty. He advocated for toughness as a tool for building strength. And the first kind of toughness we must cultivate is with ourselves, with our excuses, with our fears disguised as procrastination, with our cowardice dressed up as waiting for the right time. You may have talent, opportunities, charisma, but without virtue, all of it will be lost over time. Because what sustains a man's greatness isn't what he conquers. It's what he's able to maintain even when everything falls apart. And the question remains, are you waiting for the world to get better so you can become a better person? Or are you willing to become better so you can face the world as it truly is? We live in an era where everything must be instant, the response must be quick, the emotion intense, the pleasure easy. It's the era of instant validation, where a like seems more important than a value, and where image often matters more than substance. Social media has become a showcase for personalities that don't always exist beyond the screen. Pornography offers the illusion of intimacy without any real connection. And dopamine addictions, like gaming, compulsive consumption, and empty distractions, are shaping a generation that's learned to run from anything that involves effort, frustration, or waiting. It has never been so easy to appear to be someone, but it has never been so difficult to actually be someone. Being someone real requires inner solidity. It requires values that don't change based on other people's opinions. It requires integrity even when no one is watching. And that's what's been lost. Because upholding values in today's world feels almost like an act of rebellion. The problem is that this culture of constant comfort is killing something essential: character. And without character, man becomes fragile, easily manipulated, and directionless. He no longer knows who he is because everything that once defined him was external, fleeting, and superficial. Long before social media or smartphones existed, Machiavelli already understood this essence. He knew that true power, whether over others or over oneself, is only built through pain, preparation, and renunciation. There is no greatness without sacrifice. There is no legitimate achievement without inner resistance. But the man-child rejects this truth. He wants the status of an adult with the privileges of a child. He wants to be respected but can't stand being contradicted. He wants recognition but refuses to be challenged. He wants harvest without planting, results without process. What he doesn't realize is that this seemingly comfortable path leads straight to collapse. Because everything that comes too easily sickens the soul, and everything that comes too instantly weakens the mind. The man-child is ruled by his own impulses. If he feels irritated, he explodes. If he feels sad, he isolates. If he desires something, he consumes it without thinking. He is a slave to his emotions. And how can someone who doesn't master himself possibly lead, protect, or build something solid in this world? How can he form a family, sustain a life project, or positively influence his community? The truth is harsh but liberating. No one can deeply trust someone who doesn't trust himself, and no one can trust himself without first developing self-control, long-term vision, and responsibility over his own desires. Machiavelli saw this with clarity. A man's inner weakness doesn't just destroy himself, it compromises everything around him. That's why, if you feel like you're being swallowed by this culture of easy pleasure, constant distraction, and avoidance of your own pain, maybe it's time to stop. Stop and look inward. Because the strength you seek on the outside may need to be built first on the inside. The consequences of a man who refuses to grow up aren't limited to his own path. They ripple outward like silent waves, affecting his relationships, his family, his children, his friends, his colleagues. And more than that, they create a cycle of pain and frustration that repeats itself generation after generation. The man-child doesn't enter a relationship looking to build something real. He enters seeking comfort, emotional support, and safety. Often without realizing it, he doesn't want a partner. He wants a mother. He wants to be taken care of, to be understood, to be nurtured in his fragility. But he doesn't offer the same in return. He doesn't care, he doesn't understand, he doesn't commit to the other person's pain and process. He wants unconditional love but gives conditional affection. And at the first sign of difficulty, instead of maturing through the challenge, he runs. When the inevitable tensions of living together arise, he doesn't face them with maturity. He He shuts down, plays the victim, sabotages himself. He replaces "let's grow together" with "this is hurting me." He trades the effort of rebuilding for another empty adventure. He leaves a relationship saying he didn't feel loved anymore, when in truth he never learned how to love in a mature way. This type of behavior is destructive because it undermines the foundation of trust and shared construction. Real relationships require commitment, facing crises, hard conversations, and ego deconstruction. But the man-child wants lightness without depth. He wants affection without commitment. He wants sex without emotional connection, and this creates fragile, shallow, disposable relationships. Machiavelli, in writing about power and governments, offers a powerful metaphor for thinking about love and life as a couple. A weak prince loses his kingdom, and the same applies to love. A weak man loses everything, starting with himself. He loses his partner's respect. He loses the emotional bond. He loses his children's admiration. And finally, he loses his own sense of identity because he never held a role that truly demanded emotional responsibility. And the worst part is that often he blames the other person. He blames the woman for asking too much, for expecting too much, for not understanding his way. But the truth is simple: relationships don't fail because of too much expectation. They fail because of a lack of emotional maturity. They fail when one of the two is unwilling to grow together. The man-child wants to live adult relationships with the emotional maturity of a teenager. And that doesn't work, because true love, the kind that builds, requires maturity. It requires virtue, the same virtue Machiavelli valued to govern a state. And if he can't even govern himself, how can he possibly sustain the most delicate territory that exists? Another person's heart. That's a question every man should ask himself before entering a relationship. Am I looking for a partner to build something with? Or am I looking for someone to give me what I refuse to give myself? There comes a moment when a man must make a definitive choice. Either he keeps feeding his immaturity, chasing excuses and distractions to avoid reality, or he faces himself as an unfinished project that must be rebuilt with discipline, courage, and truth. For Machiavelli, there is no leadership without inner strength. It's not just about commanding armies or ruling a state. It's about ruling oneself, about recognizing your own excesses, mastering your impulses, acting with strategy and awareness instead of reacting with emotion and lack of control. The man who truly wants to mature must accept the harshness of the path. He must learn to say no to his own immediate desires. He must develop tolerance for frustration. He must accept that pain is part of the character-building process. Because it's impossible to become a solid man by living only soft experiences. Machiavelli does not romanticize suffering. He doesn't treat it as an end in itself. But he understands that suffering plays an essential role in the transformation of the self. It is when we fall that we are forced to reflect. It is when we fail that we learn to adjust our course. It is when we lose that we understand the true value of what we had. That's why re-educating yourself is an act of courage. It means breaking patterns that were taught, inherited, or nurtured out of convenience. It means no longer being a slave to your own impulses and beginning to consciously build yourself. Machiavelli, in all his bluntness, offers one of the most misinterpreted phrases in his work. Men must be treated with firmness, for if they are treated with softness, they will abuse indulgence. This is not a defense of brutality, it's a warning about the dangers of permissiveness. When everything is allowed, nothing holds value. When everything is made easy, character weakens. And this applies not only to how we treat others, but most importantly, how we treat ourselves. Being firm with yourself is an act of love. It means saying no to what weakens your emotional foundation. It means creating boundaries that protect your integrity. It means stopping the habit of abandoning yourself for fleeting pleasures. If you want to be respected, start by respecting yourself. Stop betraying yourself. Stop hiding behind laziness, excuses, or the belief that you're not ready. The truth is, you will never be 100% ready, but you need to begin anyway. If you want to lead, be the leader of your own life. If you want to build something with someone, be capable of sustaining yourself. If you want a strong partner, become the kind of man a strong woman would want to walk beside. Because at its core, all of Machiavelli's thinking converges on one point. The world does not belong to the good in the naive sense of the word. It does not belong to those who try to please everyone or who live waiting to be comforted. The world belongs to the strong who have learned to be just, those who know that true justice begins within, who understand that life demands structure and that emotional weakness is an invitation to failure. So stop searching for magic formulas. There is no shortcut to becoming strong. The only way is the constant practice of renunciation, discipline, and self-awareness. It's about falling, getting up, falling again, and continuing, always with more clarity and more strength, because in the end, it's not the luckiest who wins. It's the most prepared, and no one gets prepared by running from reality. You get prepared by facing it. So, the next time you ask yourself why your life seems stuck, look in the mirror and ask, am I acting like a man or like a boy who refuses to grow up? The world needs you awake, it needs you whole, it needs you responsible. Don't be just another one who runs from pain and drowns in shallow pleasures. Be the one who faces chaos and turns it into character. Be what Machiavelli would call a man of virtue. Because the man-child, he might be accepted on Instagram, but in the real world, he's discarded. In companies, in relationships, in challenges, he sinks. Because no one carries an adult who still behaves like a child. In the description of this video, you'll find a reading list with books that will help you reflect more deeply on this. Books that will show you how to recover your strength, your identity, and your autonomy. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever lived with a man-child? Have you ever been one? Have you suffered because of it? Do you think society encourages maturity or reinforces immaturity? Leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. It might help someone else who's going through this process. And please, question everything, even yourself. Because only then will you stop being part of the problem and start being part of the change.